Good morning. Another rainy day, so I've been busy. Let's start this up and talk a little bit about um, the changes I made. So usually I'm holding my cam here in an attempt to get a consistent shot, but I rigged together a head cam that goes onto a baseball cap. So this is the first attempt at that. So I bonk my head a lot in this, and I try to figure out the right angle for what I'm doing here. So we're getting a lot of ground currently. Um, there's creek going pretty good. Swift jump, and then over the fallen branch and beam. Creek's doing pretty well at this point. The greenery is just starting to come up, daffodils in bloom. So the angles are going to be really weird for this one, which is part of the reason I made two videos for this instance. Still working on this bridge. I really ought to make it better, taller, but this works for now. I can kind of side my way through it. This down tree is also another project to do, and so is this fallen branch. There's always so much to do, but that's part of why I started doing this, so I could better see the tasks and have a more spoken through experience. So I really do feel like I'm walking with a limp in this, though. The head bob is not any better. Um, so I'm pathing through here. We've been doing a lot of work in this area, getting rid of this invasive redbush. It's really a pain and it takes over areas, so it's just better to get it out. But moreover, that's a project for when I just need to be by the house. So often I'm working further and further in, and just taking a walk ends me up where I need to uh, work on a space. So I've realized coming through this way that I often need to turn around and go the other way. So I've been working through this space, and possibly in the next video, I'll actually be working in that space off this way so that I can come through at a different angle and not have to come through this area, which is really marshy. There's a lot of just water that stands. It's not great. All to the right here. Also, coming down this with only one hand is also a problem. These areas are getting a lot better. I'm really happy with the spaces here. I end up hitting my head or just running into things so much more because I'm attempting to walk with a cap, but like this. So I've got a brim here, so I'm seeing very little. But I think I realized that the angle is too low anyway. So if I'm just walking a little bit more like with awareness, I should be fine. So I'm coming around. Uh, this space also made me realize that I need to do more internal work on what path I want to have. Because coming around here isn't great, but going around this way to the right was a little bit better. So that's gotten worked on more. These spaces are doing good. I'm really kind of happy with the amount of tree coverage here. So this is going to stay pretty much the same, I think. But getting into here, this space is going to probably end up with a massive overhaul. At either, I think at the end of the next video, this space ends up getting a lot more cleaned up. But that's something for then. So right now there's just a lot of down trees and things in space that like I've cleared but haven't cleaned. So a lot of the process involves getting the trees and broken and dead stuff down and out. And then from there, getting it to a space where it can be utilized or burned. So it's good to see that my bridges haven't all washed out, but there's a lot of spaces that are still kind of a problem. At this point, I did lose space for the bridge, so I was just kind of checking in on that before moving on. The the walkway through here is fairly obvious, but there's a bunch of spaces where it's just kind of a mess. So you can kind of see that tree branches and things are getting very close. That's something that I'm trying to avoid. So from here, we're gonna just pursue the natural path. You can see it on the ground actually. These are deer paths that I'm just widening and cleaning up so that the animals have better walkways and we can utilize them too. So with some of this tree is really cool here. It's like split out so you can see its innards, but it's still living. And trees will always impress me with that. This space ends up getting a major overhaul as well, as I'm attempting to further uh, line this tree line with the branches as opening up this area becomes more of part of my walk. I'm happy to see that the rains haven't completely washed out my path here, so I'm able to get over, and it's not an issue. So this space is really nice. Like it ends up getting a bunch of work, I think, after these two videos, but there's just a lot. And here I have fallen. I tripped over that branch that I looked at and absolutely just went flat onto my face. It's fine though. I'm fine. It's at that point I kind of give up on the like downward style look because it is not worth it. um, this space is also one that will get a major overhaul in the near future. I'm really kind of impressed with just how messed up this space has gotten, even though it is a space that has been worked previously. But I spend a lot of time in the near future working on it and making a lot of these spaces nicer. So from here, I'm just kind of working this space a little bit because I wanted that big dead piece down. It'll allow more access because something that big is just going to be in the way. Um, it's amazing how light dead wood is. So breaking off the frilled edges before taking the whole piece and moving it to somewhere makes it a lot easier, I've found. Also, carrying from the base as opposed to the frilled end allows you to move through spaces easier, as the branches will generally take and be better about moving through a space rather than attempting to kind of like walk through a space. It generally works out a lot better. Um, I note this is an area that I want to work, and I do come back for that. But there's a lot of just like little stuff and branches and things in the way, which are kind of a problem. And I think the work that I've been doing on the other side made me way more aware of just how better these spaces can be. And my standard has risen. So these areas generally need to get reworked and redone. And a lot of the little growth has to come down and get better managed. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with how this is coming through. Just kind of like working my way back at this point. So the space is generally in a good way. We're gonna see about the space I worked a little before, I believe. But it's been a while since I actually made this video, which is part of why I wanted to get on and just produce it, make sure it was okay, and ship it out to the world so that I can have this reference point before I move on to the next one. As event season is picking up, I'm going to be LARPing on weekends more, so that makes my time where I usually put out these videos kind of different. So, and as summer creeps in, this is going to get a lot harder to manage, and it's going to get a lot harder to look at and see like where change actually is, because it's going to grow in really fast. So I need to be working as much as I can in these spaces, because now's the time to do it, in spring before everything gets overgrown, and in the middle of the winter if you get warm days. So it's really nice to have that concept here, and I'm really just attempting to do this walk as a trial run for the headgear that I put together. So this gets earmarked. Just working my way back. I don't think anything really of note from here back happens or is super relevant, but I'm going to keep it all the same just for posterity, because having these even like glances of an image are good. I wonder if pacing is part of my issue. So if I went slower, would this is my normal walking speed? So maybe going like half that and taking more of a perspective of attempting to work and really absorb the space that I'm in would be better. So every one of these videos is going to get marginally better in looks. Real quick, these are mandragoras, the little plant. They bear fruit. They're toxic, and the fruit is toxic, but it's just one of those interesting things that is in my space that a lot of people don't get it to interact with. So that's fun. So I noticed that my board is stuck here. So I come to retrieve that, taking the hat off so it doesn't fall off. And yeah, just kind of working my way back. It's kind of amazing what you lose in a first person perspective. Like, it makes so much more sense why in first person games why you have hands or some reference point to make sense of the world. Because in a lot of this video that I've realized, that you have no concept for size or angle or anything. So some of these get really awkward and looking on like where things are or why things are. You get kind of lost in the perspective that you're forced into. But this part of the creek's flowing a little bit better. That still needs to get actually run into, like actually made into a divot so that that part of the creek can run better and more effectively instead of kind of washing through the natural state of the land. Yeah, so this is also a space where I get a lot of my gravel. I am going to be, in the future, moving a lot of this gravel from there, from here. So I make a new bridge here because that old one has been an issue. So coming from this side, the water is a little bit easier to manage. If I can use the board, it'll have a stable point where I can reference. So here's just a little bit of how the sausage is made. That is the inside of my coat. But yeah, just getting the the large railroad tie across and having it sit on something so it's up above. And then that makes the bridging better so that it can be taller so it doesn't get swept up as easily. All right, so that is that one. Bonk. Then I have another one. Which is going to give me problems now for no reason. Yes, no, maybe? Testing? Oh, this is the thing that I had to do before. All right, so hello? Why? Why? How does full screen not work? Or its entire monitor one. Okay, there we are. Okay, so it snowed a few days ago, and this is my walk that I decided I needed to go on from there. This is my door, and I'm just like, that's my little bone collection. That's my collection of large sticks. And here we go. This is attempt on cap number 2. And it's so snowy. I can't believe this is still late April. It's unreal. So the bridge I made stands. It's pretty good. It's flooding currently, like I said with the rain, and it still exists, so I'm happy to see that. It does need to go higher though, as it is getting flooded into, so that pressure could and probably will wash it down the creek. But I had done a lot of work from the last video to this one, so I wanted to make sure that I did have another reference point. The the land is always so interesting to see, especially when it's in a different state. So it's always a thing to have reference point for. So as you can see with the cap this time, I am a little bit more confident in like having these interactions here, being able to go around this way. I'm more apt and confident in moving the space. It does appear to be pretty good. So again, working through these spaces. A lot of this isn't going to change currently. One moment. Okay, sorry about that. So, continuing on, the walkways are generally get much more muddy as things are in a melting state. We've still got large amounts of uh, flooding to some extent. So things are good here. The paths are generally getting better and better. So I'm just coming through and so coming through, everything is still just white from the snow. All the spaces are muddy and gross. And I decide to work some different spaces because of that. Happy with the new bridges, they work really well. I'm really happy for them, but I figured it would be really nice to get a snowy vision of what I'm working with and how. So generally when you encounter a tree that's not supposed to be there in the winter, you can just kind of bop it and all the snow will fall off and it'll go back to its normal upright position. So I've worked this space a little bit more in the meantime, um, realizing that it is better to go around to the right rather than the left. So that's what we're doing here. And as you can see, it's way easier to get in. And again, from this side, if I follow right, it just works better than attempting to veer all the way to the left. I bonk my head there. Again, Headcam is still not something I'm used to, but that just gives me more identifiers on the whole concept of what's going on. Um, so I'm good. I'm in here. So yeah, everything's just kind of snowy. The branches are more defined because they have a white outline. And I get really frustrated with this space right here. So is at this point, I'm going to start working some of this space on camera. As you can see, this is a longer video, but it's really rewarding for me to like engage with a space that I and kind of show off like, hey, this is how I get involved and end up doing a specific space beforehand and why there's no good before videos. So as I'm walking along, I kind of just like get frustrated with the space. And then I'll start working it or like just move one thing off to the side and then feel really good about the way that looks. So more things get moved and then more and then more and then more. So it's a more visually apt way to like engage with that. So it's feeding into the concept of like, well, this needs to get fixed or put away. So it does. So some of these spaces are going to get widened. Some of these spaces are just going to get cleaned in the near future. Because I'm, as much of like, I enjoy the nature, I enjoy being in an overcast space with trees above and everything. Having them in your face and like brushing against you is not great. Having sideways trees that are in your path, while visually kind of cool, not the best to like actually engage with. And you can kind of see that I'm maneuvering much quicker through these kinds of spaces. So it is great that that's happening. Um, so yeah, my little walkway here is great. I'm really happy with it. Super pumped that it's just existing as it is now. So that's just going to be how it lives. In the since I fell here, I picked up some of the stuff and have worked more of the space. As you can see, I'm keeping my head very much upward because I don't want to fall again. And as such, maneuvering through these kinds of spaces, getting a different kind of pathing back. Really interested in how this space looks and how it is. So definitely gonna be working more in these kinds of areas. I really wish there was a better like way to have this like see better what I'm doing with my body in these scenarios. Like if I could have a flying cam and do this third person, it'd be great. I'd love it. But I don't currently know how to do that because it's it seems like it'd be a lot of work to have like some sort of attached selfie stick kind of thing and get an over the shoulder view or even like a reverse perspective. A lot of the times when I'm on these walks, I'm listening to a podcast or some music, and it makes the walk go by really quick. It also kind of sets the pace. So, with this, I'm really just kind of working my way through, hoping that I come across something cool or different or can kind of show off the spaces that I've been in. It's always kind of neat to see the environmental damage of a storm or any kind of further action that nature has imposed on this. So snow is always interesting because it's so heavy. It ends up bringing a lot more branches down, and I consistently like to fix when that happens as I work through these paths. So this was really good. Really happy I got footage for this. The headcam definitely works a little bit better than having to hold it, but it definitely gets bonked off a few times, and I still need to get better at not running into things. But that's a personal thing. That's me. It's not the style. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way that this space is coming along. That my little walkway is, but this is a point in which I realize I just kind of want to get back to that other space, so I just jump across. Um, it's nice having both hands to jump, which doesn't necessarily make sense, but if you do more long distance jumping, it does for that matter. Like you do have to kind of like hop and go across. So this is the start of my fixation. This tree is very dead and in the way. So I start pulling off the additional branches as I was talking about, where I don't know how visually appealing this is going to be, but this is a little bit of how it's getting worked. So, large tree, just getting all of its bits ripped off. It's very much dead. So, this space could use a little bit of cleaning up, and I'm just really focused here. So, I just manipulate this tree and we're gonna clean up the space a bit. And you get to be part of it. Unsure if this is a kind of thing people would be interested in more so than just the walkthrough, but all the same, I figured I had the energy, so I was gonna do it. Um, so you're really not gonna see a whole lot though, unfortunately. Like, you're not really getting the I'm tearing branches off and throwing them to a different space. You're kind of just seeing approximations of the area. Super unfortunate. So I've kind of decided the space that all of my refuse is going in, but you really have to get into these spaces and manipulate your area. Your um, grapevine is another invasive in this area, but it's also a local crop. So it's interesting to engage with it in that way where when it's gone wild, you get thick vines and lots of little offshoots that are very trippy. Like they often trip you just because of how they work. So learning how to break them is actually quite important and not as easy as you'd assume. Because if you just try to manipulate them, they'll manipulate. Like they would work like a very primitive rope. So that is an aspect of being in these spaces that isn't great. The other is a lot of briars and prickers and fake roses are also a lot of problem. So working through, that's unfortunate, but working through these spaces, I kind of just manipulate the trees and the branches, and I'm going to take a message real quick while I further manipulate this tree. Okay, just COVID updates. So I'm immunocompromised. So part of that is just being aware of where there's been any kind of breakout or any kind of interaction. So just being on top of that, super huge. Just trying to keep myself safe. So I'm further working this branch down as like we've gotten down to large log and just kind of manipulating it into a space. We've gotten all the small branches off, and now it's just finding a home. As you can kind of see, this has been the home for the rest of the little branches. So now getting all of that lined up seems really nice. It's a much better answer than having it just kind of in the middle and everywhere. So I also start grabbing the other little pieces and making that space better. But this space where it was in the way really bothered me, and this is how hyperfixation works. So, yeah, this definitely was part of just how my brain works and how an active for me works, where I'll fixate on a thing, note that it's different, note that it can be better, and then fix it. I really appreciate these spaces, so I want to show that appreciation to them by making them nice and making them inhabitable and better for everyone in it. It's a lot, and there's so much that needs to get taken care of. So, because I've made a wood pile now, I realized that I could be adding to it from the other space. So, there's some of the grapevine I was talking about, just like cleaning that up, getting that over here, winding it as you pull it. So, like, you have to kind of work through it rather than just trying to like break it up. So, it's a lot. And this was a whole like day's activity. This whole thing was just like a whim, and it's really hard for me to get out when it's snowy or bad weather. So this was a decision to just like post therapy. It was just like, yeah, I should get out and I should do the thing. Even though it snowed, it shouldn't stop me because at the same time, I had a camp out the coming weekend. So I wanted to test my cold weather gear because LARPing. And this was wearing a gambeson, and that worked out really well. I can grab it real quick while we're on this conversation. So this is what I was wearing on the exterior. So it just kind of like goes into itself. Really just very nice, plain looking hoodie style garment for this area, like this style of weather. It kept me very warm. Um, the wool skirt that I was wearing with some leggings underneath did not keep my legs very warm and was definitely a thing I was sure to note that having like sweatpants style like pants and then some sort of like um, rust pant or other on top of that would is really important and why Vikings generally wore those. So that was super good. Um, that prep was very important. You can see the stick pile growing quite large as I'm moving more and more of these really large sticks that were in the way. Um, Super happy with how all of this space is turning out, and it needs a little manipulating here because the things aren't quite sitting right, but just kind of have to work through it. And it's unfortunate that you can't see what I'm working on, but yeah. Weekend went well. It was Beltane, so did maypole and dancing and had a good time. Things are good. So I take to bringing down this tree for some reason because I see that it is dead and I want it out of this way. But it is a big project and I'm just kind of doing my best to be safe about it so I don't just become found footage because that would be an unfortunate way to go. But yeah, this doesn't end up going, I don't think. I I manipulate it back and forth, but it's roots. Like it still has roots that are kind of stuck in. So this gets like brought this way, and brought over and back, and that helps to like break up a lot of those roots. And some of that does break, but I need to come back later to fully get that out and away. But that'll be next video. Um, Getting through everything. Um, Absolutely just cleaning up at this point, a little bit more here and there. And it's really good. I'm really happy with how this space comes out, and it'll be more visible in the next video. So, yeah, I'm really just fixated on this, cleaning this space up because the last few times I've come through here, it's been oh, that looks awful. I should really do something about that. and then I just don't. And a lot of procrastination works that way, where you need to do something and you don't necessarily have the energy for it. So you put it off. But this project really helps me to come back to these like put it off moments and attack them and really come after these spaces that like, oh right, that's what I saw in the video, that's that space that I wanted to make better but I didn't. And that gets me, and I'm really happy to be like on top of that. So really happy with all of this, how it's coming, how it turns out. It does take quite a while though. Like we've been here for a third of the video at this point, and it's a lot. Like moving sticks and branches and everything. And I think this is a quite a large one that I'm carrying currently because it's a lot. And if you can rest them, like have them come down on your shoulder and then like use gravity to help like maneuver them, it makes it a lot easier and is like probably way better for your shoulders to like move them that way because there's a lot of interesting body mechanics in moving these branches and like large trees. And it doesn't really relate to modern exercise very well. Like carrying things like this or, you know, other side. Like that's a load and that's one your body is very comfortable doing. But it doesn't necessarily translate to the way like we work out, you know. When you think of working out, it's not like carrying, you know, a large bundle somewhere over a long period. But I need to hydrate and so yeah, I'm going through now and just taking care of this little area that could be better, kind of further manipulating, getting things into better position, making sure that it's not going to become another pile that is in the way because there's so many little pieces that go in every which direction and just like so I'm just kind of like further manipulating the pile and like making it better and having it sit nicer, so if I do decide to move it again it won't be that big of a deal. The snow really does help to outline the tree branches as well. Like in this moment, you can see that there's tree branch here, but not like throughout. There's a couple here, and they all can get manipulated out. So going through in these times can also help you see things you didn't see before. So really great. It isn't a thing that comes up enough in games where like the seasonal adjustments have positive and negative effects like that, where something might be a secret that would be a lot harder to see in one season wouldn't be in a different season or biome or whatever, what have you. And I think that's an incredible concept that doesn't get utilized enough. So going through and pulling all this wood doesn't do a whole lot. Like, this is pretty much just for visual aesthetics and to not trip in the future, as I did in the last video. So, it's all about things that you care about. So having this space open, having it be traversable, having it look nice, all these are really important things for like the aesthetics of a walk. So I'm really happy that it worked out that way and that things are generally looking better and that I've got some of these giant pieces just moved and manipulated. There's nothing like garb that will get me to be active in such an aggressive way. It's really transformative. Putting on the costume and like really getting into the character really is an interesting and aggressive motivational factor that doesn't it isn't a thing that I have come to think about very often, but it is absolutely a factor when you garb up and you're in character. There is this little boost of adrenaline. There is a boost of like power and like feeling confident and capable and able to do more. So it is quite nice to be in garb, be in a space like this, and fully realize, like, hey, this was an absolute mess, and it was visibly a mess, but now it's better. It's not done. Nothing's ever done. But this is a space that I'm going to be a lot happier with the next time I walk through here. And that's what a lot of this is just for personal use, for personal um, growth and change. It's okay that like not a lot of people watch. It's okay that I don't get a whole lot of views on stream or interaction on stream because to me it's actually just easier to have Twitch be my editing through YouTube, and I'm just really glad that it works out really well because encoding it myself can be a problem. But it is nice to have those little call outs. And yeah, so here I'm heading my way back because I'm proud of myself. I'm just really happy with how that space turned out and just heading my way back now. Just working through and getting past these areas. Really just kind of walking normally at this point because I don't want to bonk my head. I'm really curious how the video is going to be at this point because, again, still getting used to headcam. There's a lot, and if this water droplet isn't going to move, I'm just going to end it here. Yeah, so it just got snowy. Oh well, not a whole lot I can do, but thank you all for watching. Thank you for bearing with me, and I hope that everyone has a lovely day, stays active, feels good about themselves, and puts themselves into spaces and clothes that they feel most powerful in. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.